Honda released the CB750 back in 1969. The stage was set for the inline-four to become the de facto superbike engine. Up until recently, the inline-four engine was the standard for high-revving, high-performance motorcycle engines. But now the tides are shifting. Manufacturers are using torque-first parallel twin V-twin engines, and V4s are becoming more popular for high-performance motorcycling. And it seems like we're witnessing the slow, gradual decline of the inline-four supremacy in motorcycling, and I'll be honest, it does make me a little sad. Many of my treasured memories as a young boy was seeing Gixxer 600s and CBR 1000s in Florida, ripping it up on the highways, and that screaming inline-four sound is just classic motorcycling to me. So let's take today's video to reflect on the inline four-cylinder engine and see the trajectory of the engine from the early days up until now, where it seems to be declining in popularity, and perhaps we're going to see a resurgence, but in a new way. So if you can believe it, the earliest inline-four engine actually dates back to the early 1900s. William Henderson was a key pioneer of the four-cylinder engine. He developed four-cylinder engines for Hender, Ace, and Excelsior motorcycles before ultimately being bought out by Indian. These bikes were unreasonably powerful for the time. You gotta remember, the early 1900s, motorcycles were basically bicycles with very rudimentary, oil-spewing, flame-spitting engines, basically rudimentarily attached to them. And these motorcycles were capable of going over 100 miles an hour in the 1920s on rickety little tires. But these early four-cylinder engines fell out of favor due to limited demand and limited supply due to the Great Depression and the World Wars as well. But an interesting note in history here is that MV Agusta is partly responsible for the reintroduction of four-cylinder engines in motorcycling. Their first four-cylinder engines were designed to be in racing motorcycles in the 1960s, and those ultimately went into production for a motorcycle known as the 600 GT, sort of a prototypical 600 squid bike if you ask me. The 600 GT was not commercially successful, but it did establish the four-cylinder engine in production motorcycling. And slowly but surely throughout the 60s, the prowess of the four-cylinder engine started to become understood in racing applications. Honda had been known for producing many small displacement motorcycles at this time, but their racing prowess was on the quick rise. One of my favorite motorcycles from the 60s is one of Honda's 250cc six-cylinder engines that rev to like 20,000 RPM, just truly bonkers stuff that you'd never see nowadays. But Honda really wanted to create a motorcycle that could compete with the likes of Triumph and Harley in the vast American landscape of motorcycling, where you needed something big and burly to tackle our big old highways. And the CB750 was developed as a result. And this was an incredibly purpose-built machine. You really have to look at it that way, and it outperformed every other bike on the market by a long shot. And that inline-four engine was smooth and silky in a way that was totally different than the lumpy, grumbly V-twins from Harley and the leaky, rattly parallel twins from Triumph. It was a massive step ahead. And the CB750 was a wholly modern machine at the time, with disc brakes, flashing turn indicators, and electric start. You know, the stuff that every motorcycle has nowadays. It had such a huge cultural impact that it ushered in the UJM era, where every Japanese manufacturer was making motorcycles similar to the CB750. And manufacturers kept searching for bigger engines and bigger power. Bikes like the Kawasaki Z1 and Yamaha XS1100 became predecessors to the modern sport bike. But then something really cool happened in the world of race replicas. In production motorcycle racing, the inline-four from Japan was competing against the twins from Ducati and Aprilia. And V-twins always had a size cap in motorcycle racing to make things more fair. For instance, the inline-four engines were capped to 750 cc's, while the V-twins could go up to 1000 to make sure that they could be competitive. And this is due to the nature of an inline-four versus a twin. An inline-four is naturally going to make more power because it has more cylinders, whereas a V-twin needs to make up with displacement, but will have better torque down low. Inline-four engines have displacement spread across 4 cylinders, which means shorter strokes, which means higher revs and more power at the top. Think of your classic R6 that has really tiny little pistons and can rev to almost 17,000 RPM. And compare that to a twin-cylinder engine that has a longer stroke which again means better torque off the apex but a limited top-end power. But by the mid-1980s, manufacturers started selling production motorcycles that were very similar to their racing bikes. Bikes like the GPZ 900 Ninja and the Suzuki GSXR 750 were the industry frontrunners for this, especially the Gixxer. Each of the big four had their own flagship four-cylinder engine that had liquid cooling, sporty ergonomics, razor-sharp handling, and flashy, crazy 90s graphics. Four-cylinder sport bikes were so popular in the 90s that they even cross-platformed them with smaller bikes like the GSX 250R and the Baby Blade, the 250RR. There were so many different displacement categories of four-cylinder engines, it's kind of hard to believe nowadays where you barely find four-cylinder engines. And that leads me to this more modern era where I think we can all agree that the golden age of inline-fours is firmly behind us. And this gradual shift is due to a multitude of reasons. There has been a shift happening in the motorcycling industry for at least the past 10 years where riders are demanding more torque-first, friendly, street-oriented motorcycles. People have accepted that they don't want the inconvenience of an inline-four power delivery, no matter how fun it can be for us adrenaline junkies. Additionally, there's really nothing that fun about revving a 600 out to stop and go traffic. You kind of feel like you never really get to use the machine. Or conversely, riding a leader bike and being able to do 90 miles an hour in first gear where it basically becomes an uncomfortable hot super scooter. These bikes just aren't designed for street use. We can all agree on that. They were literally built as race replicas, right? Manufacturers are prioritizing new, playful parallel twins that offer the right blend of torque and power for the street rider. And this new middleweight category is massive and basically completely all-encompassing for manufacturers nowadays. That's where the money is. Instead of 250s, 600s, and 1000s, you now have 400s, 500s, 600s, 700s, 800s, 900s, and even 1000cc middleweight bikes. Think of the Ninja 400, the R7, the RS 660, the Daytona 660, the Duke 990, the MT-09. There's a lot of bikes in this new hazy middleweight world. And not only are these parallel twins better for street use, they're way cheaper for manufacturers to make. Now, outside of parallel twins, three-cylinder engines found in the MT-09 and the Street Triple have become more popular as well. We can all see that the parallel twin is the de facto engine of the modern era. And then there, of course, are a few V-twin motorcycles like the KTMs or the Ducatis as well, but truly, the parallel twin is here to stay. And we're actually seeing a new UJM version of the parallel twin in the naked bike category. You have the MT-07, the Honda Hornet, the GSX 8S, and the Kawasaki Z650, which a little long in the tooth, but still a parallel twin. So across every category, the inline-four is becoming less and less common. It's expensive to make, doesn't make appropriate power, and just isn't what people are looking for anymore. And many manufacturers have just flat out terminated bikes that they used to make, like the R6 and the R1. If you all remember a few months ago, I woke up and decided to wage war on the motorcycle gear industry, or at least a few specific brands who influencers seem to be jamming down the throats of every motorcyclist on the internet. I was really sick and tired of people endorsing low-quality, mass-produced, unsafe gear that offered nothing in the way of protection or ingenuity. Saint saw that video and was excited to see my positive thoughts on their jeans, and since I have unintentionally become the appointed arbiter of quality motorcycle pants, Saint reached back out and wanted me to test out their armored bomber jacket. I've been rocking the jacket while I ride my desert sled, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't thoroughly impressed with the overall quality and the fit and finish of this jacket. Not only does it look great, but it's really well made, and it's a CE AA rated garment. This jacket also comes with removable level 2 armor in the elbows and shoulders and has a back pocket for an option back protector as well. And if you decide to pick up the Saint bomber jacket in September, they'll throw in a D30 Viper back protector in for free, and just choose your jacket size. The protector will automatically be added to your cart as well. Saint is owned and operated by a bunch of really solid dudes in Australia that are really doing the Lord's work, making top quality gear that looks great and is actually going to keep you safe out there on the road. You guys know me, I don't just get behind any brand that's offering a buck. I probably turn down 10 times the amount of sponsorship offers I get for every offer that I actually take, and I only want to refer you guys to the best companies that I actually stand behind. So if you're in the market for a new jacket, check out the link below. If you snag the armored bomber jacket before the end of September, you'll get that free D3O back protector as well. Thanks to Saint for the support of the channel. Now let's get back to the show. And inline-fours may not only be going extinct because of inappropriate street power or increasing manufacturer costs, but also due to the fact that it's harder to meet emissions with these motorcycles. When you have more surface area on each piston versus a parallel twin, you're going to produce more hydrocarbons, which makes it harder to control emissions. The MT-09, for example, it's a modern miracle that they made that motorcycle be as efficient as it is in terms of emissions, but also maintaining the power characteristics. To keep making new four-cylinder bikes, manufacturers have to constantly develop and invest in the R&D for these bikes. That's why you've seen Suzuki basically stall out with the GSX-R 1000 in 2017. It's been 8 years since Suzuki has launched a new GSX-R 1000, and we're not even talking about the 600s that have been the same for almost 20 years at this point. And we went from having the power progression ladder being R3, R6 to R1, where now you have the MT-03, MT-07, MT-09, and MT-10 in that more street-oriented character and flavor. And Yamaha outsells MT-10s to R1s and R6s by a long shot. Now, inline-four motorcycles are obviously not extinct. There's still a die-hard contingency of people who love them and are lovingly maintaining and caring for the old school bikes. There are still die-hard street squids that daily 15-year-old ZX-10s or stunted out ZX-6Rs as well. But the general market interest doesn't really seem to be aligning with inline four-cylinder engines anymore. And beyond that too, the supremacy of the V4 engine versus the inline-four engine has been seen in motorcycle racing as well. In MotoGP, at the top echelon of prototype motorcycle racing, 20 of the 22 bikes on the grids are V4 engines. Only 2 are not. The Yamaha factory bikes of Fabio Quartararo and Alex Rins currently have an inline-four configuration using the Big Bang cross-plane configuration to change the firing order on that engine. Just get a quick RIP for the Suzuki. I love that bike so much. But what's interesting is with bikes like the ZX4RR, we may see the inline-four return in a much smaller engine configuration for novelty and niche users. Honda actually just recently filed a patent for a CBR 400RR that may compete with the ZX4RR. We've also seen CF Moto come out with the Voom 500, a 4-cylinder tiny displacement bike similar to the ZX4RR. And many legacy manufacturers like Kawasaki and Suzuki still utilize the inline-four, albeit in different applications and in lower states of tune. Famously, the GSX S1000 GT uses a detuned K5 Gixxer engine from over 20 years ago. And the Z900 uses a 948cc inline-four that barely revs out to above 12,000 RPM for that detuned, laid-back, bulky inline-four configuration. Honda also is out there with the CBR650R. It's a detuned inline-four found in their middleweight bike. It's the only inline-four you can get in the new not-so-super sport category that we've been covering extensively here on the channel as well. And of course, you can still get an inline-four in the MT-10, and it's that delicious cross-plane crank, which to me is a whole other can of worms. It's a very, very special engine. So inline-four engines serve their purpose for getting more people excited about motorcycling. The price to performance ratio of an inline four-cylinder sport bike is just simply unbeatable. You can buy a $5,000 bike off of Craigslist that'll do 190 miles an hour. And over 30 years, they went from basic little UJM roadsters to fully fledged racing machines that completely set the tone for a generation of riders and racers. And to this day, you go to any club racing event, you are more than likely going to see the vast majority of sport bikes that people are riding are classic Japanese inline-four machines, your R6s, Gixxer 600s, CBR 1000s, and Gixxer 1000s. And the inline-four was the engine platform that developed so many countless innovations for motorcycling. Advanced engineering for the frame design of a twin-spar aluminum frame, having the inline-four dangling there as a stressed member, advanced traction control, chip control throttle, liquid cooling. I mean, so many things have been added to the inline-four engine to make it just so advanced. And let's be real, it is really hard to deny the allure of a screaming inline four-cylinder engine. There's something about it that just tickles the motorcyclist's monkey brain. And the importance of the inline-four engine just cannot be overstated. And we have seen some news that the R1 will have a new round of development to stay competitive in World Superbike. And there's a quote from one of the lead designers and engineers that I really thought was great. And it said that Even if we don't sell a single one of these things, its mere existence is important as a flagship motorcycle, and I really have to agree with that. Nowadays, we have the wonderful variety of different street-oriented motorcycles that are going to give triple-cylinder flavors, torquey V-twins, fun, usable parallel twins, but we have to pay tribute to the inline-four for paving the way for us to get here. So guys, that's gonna wrap up today's video. What do you think about the inline-four engine? Is it your favorite? Do you have a different configuration that you've loved more? Have you owned an inline-four cylinder motorcycle? I personally have never owned an inline-four in my personal motorcycle stable, but I've owned many as giveaway bikes on yammynoob.co. And one of my absolute favorites had to be the supercharged Kawasaki ZH2. What a special engine. I'll catch you guys in the next one. See you later. Fellas, time's up. This video is over. Do you know what else is running out of time? This sweepstakes for the RS457. I really don't want you to miss this. This bike is super cool. It's hard to come by and it's brand spanking new. If you're a beginner sport bike rider or if you're an experienced rider that just wants an awesome, fun toy, head over to the website, sign up and become a member, and don't miss your chance to win this RS457. And I suppose you could keep watching Yammy Noob right over here or here. It's somewhere. I don't know. Go watch it.